Hello everyone, this is my latest pencil portrait sketchbook session, and this time I had the pleasure of creating a master study of an incredible artist I wasn't actually aware of until recently, Philip de László. It's funny, I've visited countless art galleries over the years, from London to small towns abroad, and it's very possible I've walked past one of his portraits before without realising it. But somehow his name had escaped me. That was until a fellow artist in one of the groups I'm part of shared some of his paintings, and I was immediately captivated. The first thing that struck me was the brushwork. Some of de László's portraits reminded me instantly of John Singer Sargent, who's one of my all-time favourite artists. You can see that same elegant balance of realism and painterly expression, the looseness in the brushstrokes that still somehow capture perfect form and likeness. There's that same confidence and immediacy where every mark feels alive. After seeing a few of his paintings, I wanted to learn more about the man himself. Philip de László was a Hungarian-born portrait painter active during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He became world-renowned for painting royalty, aristocrats, and influential figures from across Europe and America. He actually succeeded Sargent as one of the most sought-after society portraitists of his era. What I love about de László's story is that he wasn't born into any kind of privilege. He came from quite humble beginnings in Budapest, trained rigorously, and built his reputation through sheer dedication, talent, and skill. His portraits have this luminous quality to them, that sense of presence that makes the sitter feel both grand and human at the same time. That's what I wanted to explore in this sketch. Not just accuracy for the sake of study, but that quiet strength in his work. Unfortunately, when recording this time-lapse, I lost some of the footage from the early blocking stage. My camera memory filled up without me noticing, so about 20 minutes of progress disappeared. Maybe a little bit less, but around 10, 15 or 20 minutes. But thankfully, I captured the rest of the process. I began by lightly sketching the general outline of the head, finding the largest shapes and angles first. For that, I used one of my black wing pencils, keeping the pressure light and the lines open. I focused on mapping out the shadow shapes and proportions before committing to any detail. Throughout the drawing, I kept looking back and forth between the reference and my sketch, measuring, comparing, adjusting, really trying to capture that tilt of the head that gives the portrait its character. Once I had the foundation in place, I moved on to refining the contours and facial features. The lighting in de László's original painting had such strong contrasts in the eyes and cheekbones, so I wanted to get those dark values in early to anchor the rest of the drawing. After a while, I decided to change the camera angle, partly to give a closer view of the pencil work, but also to keep things visually interesting for you watching. From there, I focused on deepening the shadow areas in the hair, modelling the face, and giving it more structure through subtle cross-hatching. Sometimes I'd work in one consistent direction for smooth tones, other times I'd use cross-hatching to build up more texture. Finally, I added a bit of tone to the background, using broader, sweeping pencil strokes to frame the head and help the figure stand out. This sketch reminded me of why I love doing master studies. They're not just about copying, they're about learning how great artists thought. You get a sense of their rhythm, their decisions, their sense of design and structure. And discovering an artist like Philip de László for the first time made this session even more rewarding. It's amazing how inspiration can come from artists of the past that we might have overlooked until the right moment. The portrait I chose for this master study is one of de László's later works, Cooper Key Lady ni Lorna Peggy Vivian Harmsworth, painted in 1933. Quite a mouthful. There's something quietly elegant about this painting. The sitter, Lady Cooper Key, has this composed yet approachable expression, a mix of poise and warmth. What I really admire in this particular piece is the balance de László achieves between softness and structure. Her features are delicately modelled, yet the brushwork in the clothing and background remains very loose and confident, almost impressionistic, which reminded me once more of Sargent's work. It gives the portrait that sense of breath and life, that feeling that the sitter could almost move at any moment. It gives the portrait that sense of breath and life, that feeling that the sitter could almost move at any moment. In translating this into a pencil study, I wanted to capture some of that same duality, the softness in the face contrasted with the strength of the overall form. It's always a challenge when you're working from a painting rather than a photo, because you're essentially interpreting another artist's interpretation. But that's also what makes it so fascinating. You get to experience their visual language through your own hand. And thinking about it now, I've likely seen and admired de László's portraits before in the National Portrait Gallery in London, where several of his works are part of the collection. I remember walking through those rooms filled with grand luminous portraits of early 20th century figures, royalty, politicians, writers, and I must have paused in front of one of his without even realising it was his work. It's one of those moments where you realise how much great art you've absorbed subconsciously over the years, only to rediscover it with fresh eyes later on. As I continued sketching, I tried to preserve that graceful tilt of Lady Cooper Key's head and the calm dignity of her expression. I deepened the tones in the shadowed side of the face and softened the transitions around the light areas to give that gentle, painterly feel, even in graphite. There's a refinement in the way de László paints. You can sense his respect for his sitters. He captures them not just as faces, but as personalities. Even when I'm sketching from one of his portraits, I feel that sense of connection, as though I'm drawing both the subject and the spirit of the artist who painted them. This study was a lovely reminder of how vast and interconnected the art world really is. We're always discovering or rediscovering artists who quietly shaped the language of portraiture we know today. As I get close to finishing this study, I start paying attention to the faint shadow areas in the clothing the model was wearing, and I think about how de László must have painted them. I tried to recreate those same soft edges he achieved in the fabric, lightly sketching in evenly spaced lines with my blackwing pencil and occasionally blending some of the graphite with my finger for speed. I often use my finger as an alternative to a blending stump. It's quick, intuitive, and saves breaking focus. You can blend within a fraction of a second without having to put the pencil down or search for tools, and it lets you cover large areas while gently pushing the tones in a particular direction. It reminds me a bit of using a dry brush or a fan brush in traditional painting. Same light touch to soften and unify the tones. But be careful not to overdo it. You don't want to blend all of the areas and ruin all of your lovely evenly spaced lines. My suggestion is, and that I keep in mind for myself, is to make sure to leave some of those strokes visible and only blend in certain areas you feel it is necessary, or for personal choice or taste. From there, I move around the drawing again, making small corrections, tightening edges, strengthening contour lines in some places, and adjusting the line weight where needed to bring a sense of depth and structure. At times I also use my kneaded eraser as another drawing tool, lifting subtle areas of graphite to create light within the tones. It's one of my favourite ways to pull a drawing forward, almost like painting with light. This study has also made me realise that I'd love to explore more of de László's work, not just in pencil but also through oil painting master copies. I think it would be fascinating to dive deeper into how he built up his layers of colour and light. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see in a future video. Finally, as I reach the end, I sharpen my pencil one last time and begin applying the final delicate strokes, refining the portrait, softening transitions, and adding those last touches that bring the drawing together. Doing this master study reminded me why I love portraiture. It's not just about technical precision, it's about character. Artists like de László could reveal so much about a person with just a few confident marks. Their confidence, their calmness, even their unspoken story. Working from his painting made me slow down and notice these subtleties. The rhythm of the shadows, the soft transitions, and how much emotion can exist in restraint. That's really what I love about these sessions. They're not just exercises, they're conversations with artists of the past. Every stroke teaches you something about how they saw the world, and it inevitably shapes how you see it too. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more master studies or some of my plein air painting and sketchbook adventures, feel free to subscribe to the channel and explore some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next sketchbook session.